Reconsider Christ podcast provides real-life examples on how Christ works to interact with our lives. Our guests paint on the canvas of life their stories of joy, heartache, struggle, and victory. You will learn more about the true nature of Christ, for it is time to reconsider Christ. Christina sat on the edge of the hospital bed, realizing her dark secret was being exposed. Christina had overcome so much. Born in Sudan to successful parents who had to flee when war broke out and live in a Kenya refugee camp. Her family migrated to Dallas, Texas, where Christina walked into a fourth grade class not able to read, write, or speak English. Ridiculed by both white and black school children, Christina became determined to figure out her new culture. There were many obstacles, yet Christina's drive to succeed propelled her forward. Now a successful business improvement consultant with 5 college degrees, she has successfully integrated her African heritage with her new American culture. And when the wheels fell off that day in the hospital, she realizes most importantly how much God loves her. This podcast pairs well with the video series of Season 2, Episode 3. Hello, Christina.
Well, hello.
I am just, so many of these podcasts I say I'm so excited, and I'm going to say something completely different today. I'm just so pumped to have you on the podcast today. Your story is just mind-bending and amazing, and I've just enjoyed so much getting to know you and hearing that story. And the listeners today are just going to just want to reach out and hug you and say thank you by the time we finish this podcast.
Well, I will hug them back. And it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Great.
Any opportunity I get to touch people's lives with my story, which is really God's story, I am there.
That's evident. Thank you so much. So, there's going to be a theme today that's just fascinating, and the way you've described it a couple of times to me is an African woman in a Western world.
Yep.
And then we throw in Christ and family and everything and career, your exciting career you've already had at your young age. So you weren't born in the United States of America. Where did your life begin?
Yeah, so I was not born in the United States of America, though I love this country. I was born in Juba, Sudan, which is now called South Sudan because the country is split.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so everything's going great. If anybody knows their history, they know that there's issues in Sudan. So tell us about your journey from Sudan to Kenya to Uganda because of wars.
Sure. So the country has been in war for years, ages, and there's multiple types of war. There's the South versus the North. There's tribalism and wars there. The Dinka tribe is heavy with just creating commotion. And so my family, back in those days, I was a young girl. I think my parents only had 3 kids at that time. Or 4 kids at that time. Because of the war, we couldn't stay there. We had to flee and leave as Sudanese refugees. So we went to Kenya temporarily, and then we ended up settling in Uganda in one of the refugee camps, actually called Kiradongo. And I remember that because my experiences there were quite interesting. And the reason I say that is because in Sudan, we lived in Khartoum in a big compound house with my uncle and my full family, and we had drivers, we had cooks. We were not in need of anything, if I may say. But when we transitioned, we ended up in Kiradongo. Some of us, food was, I don't know, were we going to get food? It was just really difficult. I was that Discovery Channel child running around and playing in the dirt and all of that. So yeah, that was the transition for us.
Yes.
And
yeah. Go ahead. So tell me about then. So you're there and a life without need, and your parents are doing well with their careers, and then you go into the camp. What were the changes and what was the experience?
So the camp was different because one, I wasn't living in a traditional house. I was living in a hut. So that's one. The things I remember specifically was, I remember that in this camp, there's these things called juma, and they're like little worms that get inside of your feet. So some of the kids didn't have shoes, and those things were just relentless, and they went inside of your body and they just fed off of you, and you would have to remove them all the time, and it was painful, and my mother had to do it, surgically and all that. And so I remember that. I remember just cooking and like just the environment where we would cook. It was different. Prior to that, I didn't have to cook. I mean, food was cooked for me.
Right.
I remember my dad was never really around because he was always in a city trying to find opportunities for his family. So we were mostly with our mom. I remember my little sister was actually born right when we got to Uganda. So my mother had an infant child. Every single one of us, the children, almost came to a near-death experience while we were in Kiradongo or Uganda. My little brother, Emmanuel, the one came after me, got really sick. There's just a lot of hardships that I watched as a young child at that time. And it was a God-given thing that the Lord decided to take us out of that situation, because the truth is, I'm not sure if we would have made it. I'm not sure if any of the kids would have made it.
Specifically in Kenya at that camp.
Well, specifically in Uganda, in Kiradongo.
Okay.
Yeah, in Kiradongo, because it's a refugee camp. And I mean, if you've seen pictures of refugee camps, they're very, from a civilization perspective, they're lacking a lot of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I've been humbled. I was humbled in that experience, and I learned very quickly because I was dirt poor. I mean, dirt poor, literally.
Dirt's all you had.
That's right. I mean, and family and love, but that's, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what did you know about Christ during those years? These would be the years from like 4 or 5 up to 10 and 11. Yeah.
So what did I know about Christ? So my father actually in Sudan studied in seminary school. Mm-hmm. We grew up as Catholics. I was baptized as a Catholic child. Mm-hmm. And I actually had a godmother and all of that fun stuff. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand anything about Christ. I was just following like any other child would, the guidance of their parents. So when we were in Uganda, we were still Catholics, but mm-hmm. my father also at this time, trying to get his family in a better position, things were a little bit different for us, but that was the beginning of my Christian knowledge. I didn't know God. I just had a religious affiliation, if I may say.
Yeah. And so what was your thought? So religious affiliation, what was your thought about Christ at that time? Do you remember?
To be honest with you, I did not have a thought.
You were surviving.
I was just, I was a child, whether I was going to school, focusing on childish things.
Yeah. Or
I was just with my family supporting. I didn't really understand what God was until I came to the United States and I was plugged into church here.
Mm-hmm. And walk us through the steps to get from Uganda to Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. So after getting selected through the application, we came in and we did an interview, a robust interview. So for those of you who have not gone through the refugee process, it is robust. The United States is doing it right. We went through that. They screened us. Everything was good. They gave us our fly date, and then we showed up, and we just had suitcases, just 1 or 2 suitcases, and we came, myself and my whole family. And
how many siblings at that time?
At that time, there was 5 of us.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Okay, Joseph, Christina, Emmanuel, Samuel, Winnie. Yeah, 5 of us. So.
And more to come.
Yeah. So there were 5 of us. And I remember some funny things. I remember being on a plane. I had never been on a plane before. And I remember when they served us, and I was sitting next to my dad, and they served us broccoli. Now I know what it is. I looked at my father and I was like, Daddy, why are they serving us trees? I've never seen it before. Because broccoli looks like little trees. So
right.
Yeah, that was our experience. So the way it works is that you come to a country. Usually the states within that country have openings of how many refugees they can take. Mm-hmm. Our family that came with us was split and sent to Minnesota. We were brought to Texas. because Texas had open room for us. We were stationed somewhere near Dallas Oak area, near Dallas Love Field.
Okay.
And the first school I attended was Sam Houston Elementary School. Sam Houston Elementary School.
Yeah. So you were just immersed immediately into Texas, even with the Texas hero.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, welcome to Texas.
So what are you thinking now? You went from a refugee camp, you're living in Dallas, and you're going to school again. Is life just spectacularly great or what?
It was a complete shock to me. In fact, when we got to New York, we had to connect, right? We went from somewhere to New York first before we came to Texas. And I remember making that connection. And I was very confused because I saw white people for the first time.
Wow.
And I was like, this is interesting. And then specifically, I remember seeing white women walking and everything was white except for their legs because they had stockings on. And I was like, why are they white and black? As a child, right? It just, my mind is thinking about all of these things. So it was just a complete culture shock. I'd never seen anything like this. And so for me, when we landed in Dallas with our little 2-bedroom apartment that the program gave us, and then they took us to thrift shops and we were able to get some clothes and they set my dad up with work and my mom. And now we're in school. I don't know how to read, write, or speak English.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes, of course.
And I start taking ESL. And the kids are mean. I mean, for those people who have seen Mean Girls, children are much ruder. We should create a movie called Mean Kids. Kids are just mean. And that's really when I started to realize, oh, you're on a whole new ball game, honey. This is all different.
The game has changed.
The game has changed, right? Everything was different. I mean, my hair was being made fun of because I was a little African girl and my mom did my hair a certain way. My skin was extremely dark and lovely, which I've come to learn and love. But back then I didn't because I was being made fun of being dark. And it wasn't the white kids that made fun of me. It was also Black kids that made fun of me, my own fellow African Americans. And I was just like, all right. So I had a very tough elementary education. It was very hurtful. And I think that's really when a lot of pain started. And culture clash was introduced to me because when we went home, my siblings and I, when we went home from school, we didn't really walk into what you would call the traditional Western family where parents are like, oh, come here, sweetheart, everything okay? How is your day? African parents don't have time for that. They're always in the mental space of survival. What do I need to get my kids for them to survive to get to the next step? So if you're a child and you're dealing with personal issues, insecurities, good luck. Find a way to deal with it because you're not going to get that comfort, right? So kind of had to start learning that. I felt like I had two battles. In school, I'd have a battle, and then at home, I had another battle to fight. And that's where the two cultures really started to clash.
So how'd you cope with that as a kid, really?
I wrote. So I was a writer. I started writing poems. I started just writing because I had to get it out somehow, right? I had to get it out somehow. So I started writing, even though I wasn't good at it. And I was learning English and everything. I was nervous to always read out loud because I'd get made fun of, but I tried. I graduated from ESL through my elementary school. I was a very bright kid, honestly. All of us were, because we spoke other languages, like anywhere between 4 to 7 different languages. We just didn't know English. But I wrote, and it wasn't until when my father was invited by a colleague. He was working at CompuCom at that time. He was invited by a colleague to come visit First Baptist Church Carrollton. And when we came to First Baptist Church Carrollton, I was plugged into the 5th grade young women's Bible study. And I remember my Bible study my Bible study teacher's name, her name was Miss Marin. And the other lady that was there that also had a group of girls her name was Miss Jan. There were 2 of them and they each had between 5 to 6 girls. And that's how I met Jan Yacht, the woman who is now in my life, who I basically call a second mom, a white Southern Baptist woman who just saw a beautiful little African girl and said, I want to get to know you. And yeah.
Wow. And so that became your lifeline between the clashing cultures. And tell me about your relationship with her.
Yeah. So when it first started, it was a bit odd, right? Because Africans tend to be a bit non-trusting because they face such hardships in life, right? They're a bit cautious. And so, but because it was church and my father had always known God and our family had always known God through Catholicism, church was a safe environment. And so this woman, when she reached out, my first movie experience was with her. My first, a lot of my first things were with her. Like she took me to my first shopping experience, my first like dining out experience. I can't tell you how many firsts I've had with her.
Wow.
But she became the person. I really think that she was the person that God intended to be in my life, to give me that grounding. Like, you have this, you have culture, you have all these culture clashes. And I need my daughter to be supported in some way. I need her to have an outlet. I need her to have some type of figurehead in her life that just loves on her when she needs it. Because one thing that I've come to learn is I'm needy. I need love. I need to be loved. And these are things that every person really needs. And I felt like, though I knew my parents loved me, it's just what I needed at that time wasn't just love. It was more than that. It was like understanding. It was affirmation that, okay, honey, you're going through things and I get it. Here's how I can help. And she exposed me to the American lifestyle. So it helped me to kind of understand and be able to navigate the different waters and merge my life to in a way that made sense. Yeah, so that's really the significant role that she played at that time.
And extremely significant, obviously. So what's going on with you in Christ now?
So right now,
in seventh and eighth grade there.
So I start learning about Christ.
Yeah.
I start, I get this teenage Bible from Miss Marin, and I start reading and I start learning about this person they call Jesus and what he did for us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm connecting. I'm like, I'm a Christian. I know that, but I really wasn't. I didn't understand what it meant to really be a Christian until 7th grade church camp. And I remember it like it was yesterday. There was a huge just auditorium of nothing but kids, elementary school kids, or actually 7th grade is middle school now. So middle school kids.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there and the pastor it was a Saturday night, the highlight of the night. And he was just preaching to us. And I remember him saying, my daughter, I love you. And no matter what, I'm here for you. I know I don't want you to feel alone. I don't want you to feel like nobody has your back. I have been with you every single step. I see everything. I see your tears. I see your hurt. I see the confusion. I see the insecurities. And I'm here with you. And I felt like God was talking to me. And it finally clicked in my head. This man literally made the decision to go to the cross and die. Sorry, so that I could have a chance to be saved. And I was never alone. And it just all clicked because I didn't feel like I had my parents, my dad. I didn't feel like I had my dad there with me. My dad was gone, working so hard to protect and provide for us and I wanted so bad to have that fatherly just connection and love. And Jesus was like, where are you looking? I'm right here. I'm right here. And when I realized that, I knew where I belonged, and that I knew that I wasn't alone.
Christina, the young girl from the Sudan, now understands more about her American culture. Most importantly, though, Jan continues to invest in her as her knowledge of Christ grows. Now we move on to the challenges of high school and college and move towards that gripping scene in the hospital room. Christina's life graph starts with determined accomplishment as she exceeds academically. Life, as you will see, has some rough pitfalls from which Christina also has learned. Her relationship with Christ has ups and downs, yet continues to take her to new heights of love and fulfillment.
Some of the ups and downs that I experienced through high school, right? I did start dating.
Yeah.
My sophomore year in high school, and Daddy was not happy with that.
No.
So
No.
I specifically started dating a young African-American man, and parents were just not happy about that. So there's really where the division, me and my dad issues really started. I think that father had expectations of his African daughter.
Yeah.
And it just, from a romantic perspective, and I didn't understand it, and I was never made aware of it. So for me, I thought I was doing my job. I was excelling in school because school was the thing that mattered. What's the harm in dating, right? So I dated, struggle started. The relationship was, I probably knew 3 months into the relationship, I'm not gonna lie, that it was not for me. But I was a young woman who seeked the approval of a man. And this person showed me the attention, and they loved on me. They were my best friend. They cared for me. And I was like, yep, I'm sold, I'm good. So, but I think that there's definitely reason now to look back and say, okay, that could have really went a different way if I had continued with that, right? So I started dating, and Dad and I are, we're struggling. Mom and I have always struggled. We started struggling, like, I'm talking elementary school struggling. So, but because society always talks about the daddy-daughter issues, I thought that was my major problem, right? So there were even times when I was like, I'm running away. I'm leaving. Like my junior year, I was like, I'm done. I can't stay in this house anymore. I'm leaving. And Jan was like, no, young lady, we have a plan. You are gonna graduate, and when you leave, you're gonna leave in an honorable way, so you never have to come back. So that was the plan.
Yeah.
So I make it through high school, and I make it through high school. I graduate, I get to college, and Jan was the person that took me to tour my colleges and explore everything. We went to Baylor, we went to Hardin-Simmons, we went to all of these different schools. She was the person that did it with me. Applications and all that I had to learn. I really had to learn from an early age that I had to do things for myself and my siblings and my family, or else it wasn't going to get done. So I think that's really when my consulting, that self-starter personality started to come early on. And so you're right. I knew that I had to mitigate risks in order to position myself for success. So I went to a Christian college. I made sure I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I was studying law and business. I got to the school, and it was an amazing experience. I became the poster child of Howard Payne on their pamphlets and everything. I was their ambassador. I would give tours to new students. It was a great experience. But the only downfall is that the boyfriend that I had at that time, which I thought I broke up with, followed me to the same school.
Oh, uh-oh.
So now
well, a risk has entered that was not mitigated.
a risk has entered that I thought I could control. And this is when I started learning the lesson that you can't control everything. You can control you, but you can't control another person. So the young man was 2-3 grades ahead of me. So when I was a freshman, he was a senior. When I was a sophomore, he was already out in the world. He wasn't going to school or anything, college or anything. So it wasn't until his girlfriend, decided to go to college when he was like, oh, well, if you're going to college, I'm going too. I think overall, I was a good inspiration for him, but I didn't need him to follow me to college. I wanted to go to Baylor. He said I can't go to Baylor because he couldn't get into Baylor. And I was like, I don't have to go to school where you're going.
Right.
I end up choosing Howard Payne. He follows me there because he got in. I joined the Douglas MacArthur Academy of Freedom, which is the honors academy at Howard Payne. He joins that too. And now we're like the 2 Black people in the entire organization, the Black girl and Black guy. So it's quite interesting. I'm navigating the waters of an African American Black woman in a mostly white environment.
Right.
And for me, if you bleed red, you're my people. I don't really care. I don't see color, but
Right.
there's that racial thing. It's there, right?
Right.
And for me, it's not even about, race. For me, it's just like, I want to be successful. And these are the people that are successful. Whoever's successful, I'm going to be there, right?
Right.
So college started great. The college career was up and down, and there were some things that definitely happened that I can go into, but I'll pause here for a minute and then let you ask a follow-up.
Well, we've kind of been joking about mitigating risk and all that. And, there was there is a hardship here that you're willing to talk about, and the lessons that have come from that. So and now I can kind of see where it all comes together. So walk us through that.
Yeah. So this specific hardship is a story that I hid for years because I was never comfortable with it. And part of the reason I wasn't comfortable with it, I just want the audience to know, is that growing up in an immigrant home, African home, there's specific things that they expect from their children. You excel in school, you are not ashamed to the family, and as a daughter, you are honorable and in all of the ways that an honor can be defined by that culture. And I put quotations, defined by that culture, because I think that honor means different things to different people.
Yeah.
So I grew up in an environment where I felt like the respect, not even the respect, but the pleasing of my family, my people, my mom, my dad, my name, the Toto name was the most important thing. I was told, you do not bring shame to this family. And if you do, you are excommunicated. And I saw that in other women in a community who that has happened to. And on the other side, I was a young woman who was in love, or at least I thought I was, or maybe I just was comfortable. And this young man was there with me in college, and we were together, and I got pregnant. I got pregnant. And when I got pregnant, it was a complete surprise to me. This is my freshman year in college. I am 19 years old. And I've been sheltered. I don't know too much about the world. And the only thing I was told is go to school and get your degree. And if you don't, you're ashamed to the family. And I was so afraid of being that shame. And I was so afraid of being excommunicated, all of it, that I called a friend of mine, a male friend of mine who was an atheist, because I thought that's the only person that I could go to that wouldn't judge me. And I was so afraid of judgment. And he was just like, even an atheist told me, I don't agree with your decision, but I'm here to support you. I called the clinic and I was like, I have to get rid of this. I kept it hidden from the young man. I did not want him to know. This was going to be in secret. It was going to be taken care of. It was going to be done. The weekend of, I leave and I'm like, I'm going home. He's like, okay, I guess I'll see you when you get back. And then all of a sudden I'm like, he's trying to reach me, and I'm actually supposed to be going to the clinic and getting this done. I'm like, oh, I'm in the hospital. I'm not feeling okay. He calls every hospital looking for me because he knows that I'm pregnant. He knew that I was pregnant. He just didn't know that I was going to get rid of the baby. So Saturday morning, I go to the clinic. I take care of business. And I was so scared in that room, and we can share that later, all of the fears that came and the hesitations and everything. But it happens. And as it's happening, I feel like it was an out-of-body experience for me. I do it. As soon as I leave, I felt like my soul left. I left my soul there. I get home, not even get home. My friend is driving me to a place because I can't drive myself. I've been sedated. And immediately my mother's blowing up my phone. And I'm just like, oh, Lord Jesus, what is happening? My mother's blowing up my phone. It turns out that this young man connected the dots and realized what I was doing and called my mother and was like, if Christina doesn't want that child, I will keep the child. Please do not have her get rid of this child. My mother was completely oblivious to any of this. And I get on a call, I pick it up, and she was just like, Christina, like, yes, mommy. is this true? I was like, what's true? She goes, are you currently getting an abortion? And I didn't know what to say. And she was like, okay, with that silence, I have my answer. You need to come to the house right now. So I have Colt, my friend, drive me to my parents' house.
Oh, man.
And me and my mom talk about it. So what happens after that, I can share at a different time. But once all that situation was calmed, I went back to Brownwood and I entered the most deepest depression that I didn't realize was real. I mean, I didn't realize depression was real until this. And it was like, I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't make myself do anything. I was just so lost. I was confused. It was just something wasn't right. And I would go to work at the college and I would sit there in the admissions office and I just was lost. And this young mentor of mine was like, Christina, what's going on? Are you okay? And so one day, I don't know what it was, as the spirit came over, I just started bawling and I started crying. And I was just like, I did something that wasn't good. And she was like, what is it? And I wouldn't tell her what it was. And I hadn't recovered yet. And I was going through so much that I actually ended up in a hospital.
Oh, wow.
And she had to take me. And that's when she realized what I did. Because when I found out I was pregnant first, the first hospital I went to was in Brownwood. So that same doctor that I now have returned to was like, where's your baby? I had a baby when he first saw me, and now I don't have a baby anymore. So at that moment, I couldn't hide. I was completely exposed. And I had to be 100% authentic in all of my shame and all of my bad decision making, all of it. I had to be completely naked. And her response to me was a hug and love. And she was like, God still loves you. And that was one of the first times I had a real life demonstration of, Christina, it doesn't matter how bad you mess up. There are people in this world who God has put specifically to love you through your hardships. You're not
you
perfect.
Have wings?
Right?
I mean, wow. What a friend to have at that spot at that very moment.
Yeah. So that's the hardship that I faced. And it was a decision I made. I own it. I know what I did. But now I'm empowered to tell women, to give women advice on it so that they can make a different decision.
Yeah.
Because I know the decision that I made. You know, and whatever decision they make is theirs, right?
Yeah. So 2 questions, Christ and Jan. So let's start with Jan and move to Christ. I'm not hearing Jan's name through this process.
So this is the thing.
Here's the thing.
Jan meant so much to me, but at my root, at my core, I was still a young woman who wanted to please those who were in authority figures in my life. And I always wanted them to see me in the most best way possible because that's what I was taught.
Yes.
And so Jan never knew anything about this. In fact, till today, Jan doesn't know about it.
Oh my goodness.
And that's something that I have to have a conversation with Jan because we're writing a book
together.
We're writing our perspective series, a book about all of the journeys and the lives, etc. The first book, in the perspective series, is a mentorship story, and it's a story about me and Jan. And in order for me to write this book and to touch women's lives and encourage the discipleship concept that God gave us and the mentorship and development concept, I have to be 100% authentic, bold, and unapologetic about my story. And so Jan and I will be having those conversations. Our story has also grown. Now we are able to have the race conversations together. And this is going to be one of those conversations we have as well. Because we're now at that place where we can really understand each other from that adulthood rather than the parent-child kind of or mentor-disciple relationship, if that makes any sense.
Yes. So amazing. So back to Christ.
Yeah.
You're in the hospital a second time. The doctor is asking about where's the baby. Yep. Your friend is standing there, listening to all of this.
Yep.
You have to completely miscontrol is totally out of control of the
Yep.
situation now. Everything is out, just spinning out.
Yep.
And this woman grabs you and hugs you and said, God loves you. Tell me about you and Christ before that moment and you and Christ after that moment.
Me and Christ before that moment, I think I was going through the motions of what it meant to be a Christian as a college student. I was doing all the things. I was going to church, I was attending Bible study, but I don't think it was settling in me the way it should have. And I think that I still had more of a fear for what people thought of me, for the judgment, for expectations, than I did the fear of God per se.
Yeah.
So after that moment, it wasn't necessarily the fear of God in a sense that, oh, he's going to come after me. It was the fear of God in a sense that this is the only person that you should be concerned with pleasing. No one else matters.
Right.
And I think that was the big shift for me. Is I learned that the only person that I had an obligation to please and honor was my Father. And it was after that experience that I started to really learn. I started to own my voice, own my story, own my journey, and be outspoken about it and start to tell people about it. Prior to that, I was a silent girl who didn't really say much.
Yeah. You know, there's so much symbolism in everything that you've talked about here. You know, from the girl who, you know, wanted to be loved, wanted to please, just wanted some empathy and caring and understanding, you know, getting some from your parents, some from Miss Jan, you know, from a boyfriend, and then getting to that point where it's just, you know, I'm just here, I'm by myself, I'm alone, and I've, you know, I'm not what I wanted to be. And then for the probably the most, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the most complete moment of love came right then.
Yeah.
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 And after that, I think I started to intentionally make decisions that honor Jesus.
Yeah.
And I started to focus on what God was saying in the Bible, not so much from what the world translated it as, but from what I felt and connected through God, like what he was saying to me.
So Christina, one of the things that's evident as we've talked and as you've gone through the podcast up to this point is this amazing firstborn drive, you know, the oldest child of the family. And as you've related in an African family, that oldest child, and as the daughter, I mean, it's just the responsibilities and the burdens are heavy, heavy, heavy. But there's this drive. And now, you know, you've shifted gears out of college. You've graduated with like 18 degrees, I think, three BAs, and then a couple of masters and an MBA. Yeah. So, you know, you are just charging forward. You have a great career. You know, you started Brinker International, one of my favorite companies, as a trainer. Yeah. You go into pharmaceuticals. Then you're at Ernst & Young, and you're at iMart Express before you go into business improvement consulting with BPI. And so, you know, your career is just roaring. And then all of a sudden you get this crazy idea in your mind while you're at iMart Express.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, for me, it was always about, I'm at this point now. I've gone through these, like, you're right. Drive is one of the most important things. And I learned that not only do I have that drive, tenacity, but I also have this tendency in me where I don't get comfortable with the status quo. Once I reach a goal, I'm ready for the next. Yeah. And I've set different goals. In high school, I said I'm graduating top 10%, did it. Then I said I'm going to go to a great Christian school, did it. Then I said I'm going to go study at Oxford, and I did. Then I said, well, I'm going to get my master's or my Juris Doctorates. And I got my MBA. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to go work and I'm going to do this. So I reached all of my goals. I always tend to reach the goals. And so when I reach the goals, I'm like, what's new? So I felt like for me, iMart Express gave me such a unique experience because I was tired of the 3 years of EY consulting, heavy traveling, and I had an opportunity to ground myself, and I wanted to get my house. So that was my goal. when I got my house, I was like, okay, it's time for me to go to Africa. I have time now and I can go back home and I can reconnect, because I had been gone for 23 years.
Yeah.
23 years. So when IMARC gave me that opportunity, I took my 2.5 weeks and I left. Actually, it was 3 weeks. And what my only prayer was, Father, empty my cup and fill it back in. And my mission was to go back and connect with who I am back home and make all this make sense. Like, Lord, what is really your purpose for me? Where do you really want me to go? Because now you've given me these thoughts and these ideas, you know, to start speaking and telling my story and doing all these things and motivating. Where is that going? So when I got to Africa, I experienced the most amazing things. I came back and I knew exactly what my life needed to be and where God was taking me. And from that, Ground Z was launched.
Mm-hmm.
Ground Z is a people development firm that myself and my partner, Matthew Smith, has started. And it is a people development firm for those who are in transition, specifically the age groups of the 8th grade all the way to the college, coming out of college stage. I realized in my life, the hardships that I mostly had were always in those transition periods.
Yeah.
And I knew that those people needed support, and parents don't have the time, and the schools definitely don't have the time. So why not start a company that dedicates its talent treasures, time, talent, and treasures to investing, mentoring, discipling young men and women into becoming the best versions of themselves? And so for me, that I think was my calling, in addition to writing my story, telling my story, and being bold, authentic, and unapologetic about telling the story of God.
And that leads us to, what is the relationship between you and Christ now? You're still young. I mean, you're in your 30s and you've lived 3 lives already. So, and you know, you and Christ been all over the map. Where are you now?
So my father's right here with me. He's in here with me right now, going through this. He's encouraging me to be real and authentic. I spend my time with him. I listen to what he says, and I try my best to be obedient and bold to follow his direction, no matter how uncomfortable that is. Mm-hmm. One thing that God has taught me is that there is nothing that I can do to separate myself from him. And any mess up, any screw up that happens is redeemable. In fact, my story, if anything, is a story of redemption.
Yes.
It is a story of redemption, time and time and time again. And if God can redeem even my most baddest decisions, what can he not do with me? So I am an open vessel. And every day that I wake up, I ask God to help me build his kingdom. That's it. Just use me, Lord. Use me today. Use me in this hour.
All I'm going to say is that was beautiful. What a great place to end. Thank you so much for sharing. It's been amazing.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
So here's what I take away from Christina's great thoughts. Number 1, Christ loves the alienated. Number 2, Christ will place wonderful people into your life to help you navigate. Number 3, Christ's love overcomes the mistakes. Peace.